Do you know the real story behind Teletubbies? The real story of Teletubbies is taken from a mental hospital in Bulgaria for a group of children. Lala has a distorted face that makes her smile all the time, and she always sat in her room alone in the hospital, so she used to dance alone without music, so her skin turned yellow because she wasn't exposed to the sun. Tinky Winky was 7 years old, and he hit himself on the wall until his head cracked, so they had to tie him up with a rope so he wouldn't move. And because of the rope and restrictions that were on his limbs turned all blue. Boo was with them in the hospital, and when the fire happened, they forgot about her, and they didn't save her until her skin turned red. And for Tinky, he was always hungry and sad because he was depressed, and when they gave him food, he would throw it away and never eat it again. And this is their story in short. So Teletubbies is a mental hospital, but there is only one question left.
12 of Scaretober, the Grand Canyon Grim Reaper. This picture was posted on Reddit in 2012 of a man standing on the edge of a cliff at the Grand Canyon. The poster claims the picture is of his uncle in the early 80s when he and his friends decided to take a trip to the Grand Canyon. When they got out of their vehicle to stretch their legs, they snapped a picture and took off. When they took the photograph to be developed, they noticed something very disturbing. A man not far from the uncle was spotted. He looks to be extremely tall, wearing all black with a pale face. The uncle and his friends claim they were the only ones there and have no idea who the man is. And to this day, they still have no idea what the figure was.
This is a true horrifying story, part 79. This story took place in Saudi Arabia. Back in the 1960s, there was a Saudi Arabian family, a husband, a wife, and 7 children, sons and daughters. The husband's father was a very old, sick man, and he died from his illness during these days. After the funeral, the wife and her husband continued living their lives with their children. One night, the wife had a dream, a very vivid one. She dreamt in a woman dressed in black approaching her, and the woman told her, "My name is Aisha. I will protect you, your husband, your children, and your grandchildren from all evil till the day I die. I promise." She woke up stunned, and she never shared this dream with her husband. A few years later, in the early 70s, the husband sadly passes away, and the children were still very young. This widow raised her children until they all grew up, got married, and had their own children. Today, this widow is a grandmother to many, many grandchildren. One day, all of her own kids go to her, and they tell her that many of their own children get frequent dreams about a woman dressed in black named Aisha, and how Aisha will always protect them. But how could it be that almost all of the grandchildren got the same dream that their grandmother had in the 60s? This grandmother swore to never tell anyone about this dream, but now it is concerning. She got in touch with her sister-in-law, hoping maybe she would have an answer. The sister-in-law told her, "My father, which is your father-in-law, the father of your deceased husband, was married to a jinn named Aisha since the 40s. And every time someone tried to harm us using black magic, it never worked. Aisha was stopping it." The grandmother later asked, "How is she still alive to this day?" And her sister-in-law responded, "Aisha is hundreds of years old. Jinns live longer than we do. Aisha's kind is also not any kind. She is very powerful. She also comes around in my dreams, my children's and my grandchildren's, telling us that we will always be protected by her." "But why?" the grandmother asked. The sister-in-law responded, "Because she loved her husband, and she promised him that his family will always be protected."
When you go home at night, don't turn your lights on immediately after you get in your apartment, especially if people can see the windows of your apartment from the street, because if someone's following you home, they're gonna know what apartment you live in. When I got home tonight, I got out of my car and there was a man getting shit out of his car. I had never seen him before this morning when he was in my apartment complex area, and he just gave me bad vibes, but whatever. I got out of my car at night and he tries to make conversation with me about my headlight because it's out right now. I'm like, oh yeah, I know, I just have to get around to it, whatever. I go inside, don't turn the lights on, but I have a feeling to check my Ring camera. He's standing in the street, which is very close to my apartment building, staring at my building. And he did not leave for like 5 minutes. I mean, like halfway through, he left the empty parking spot and hid behind a car, but he waited to see. So now he knows what car I drive and where I live, just not my apartment. So, don't turn your lights on.
This is why you should never take walks alone at night. In 2007, a girl was on a late night walk when she looked at the end of the road and saw the silhouette of a man moving around very strangely. It was like he was doing the waltz, but he was moving towards her, so she was sketched out, crossed the road, and went the other way. After a couple minutes, she turned around to see what he was doing, and he was right across the street from her, now staring up into the sky with a huge grin on his face. Now totally creeped out, she turns around and walks about a half block before checking again, and to her horror, he's now crouched down right behind her. But luckily, he stands up, turns around, and kind of hobbles away. And then she notices something. The man had turned around and was now sprinting directly towards her. She runs to safety and now just hopes she never has to see that smiling man again.
Behind Dora, the cheerful explorer, is actually my true and tragic story. Hello, I am Dora Marquez, a 7-year-old child from Mexico. My story dates back to 1989 when my parents were researchers, and my best friend was a monkey I had once rescued named Boots. We lived happily together in the jungles of the Amazon. I loved nature immensely and enjoyed exploring the wilderness. However, a tragedy was about to unfold. One day, while on an expedition, I unintentionally attracted the attention of a tribe. They invaded our home, and with my parents' protection, Boots and I escaped deep into the jungle to live. Unfortunately, my parents were forever separated from me. In the jungle, I felt despair, not knowing where to go. For a while, Boots and I wandered aimlessly through the vast jungle, barely surviving with what little we had. But my situation worsened due to lacking food and water, and I even started hearing strange voices, thinking Boots was talking to me. To make matters worse, Boots eventually fell into a trap set by a fox and went missing, leaving me with nothing. Despite all these hardships, I did not give up. Determined to escape the jungle, I kept walking until miraculously, a few months later, I found a small village. However, more dreadful things were about to happen. If you want to know what happened, follow for part 2.
It was a weekend night, November of 2015. My 7-year-old son Sean was having a sleepover with 4 of his friends. At the time, my wife wasn't home for whatever reason, so I had to keep a somewhat close watch on them without making it too obvious. They were all in Sean's room making a lot of noise, and when things would get either too quiet or too loud, I would sneak over to the bedroom door and just listen to what was going on. You may think that's weird, but this was my wife's instructions, and any married man knows you never want to go against what your wife tells you to do. When it was getting a little loud, I went over to the door and heard that they were all just simply playing with Legos and other toys very loudly. So I went back to the living room to watch TV. Eventually, I heard weird thumping type noises coming from my son's room. I muted the TV and could distinguish them to be taps on one of the windows. I figured, let them have their fun so long as they're not breaking anything. I unmuted the TV. However, I quickly realized things went completely silent from down the hall in my son's room. Now I was nervous that they might have broken something, because it was very uncommon for them to all be completely silent for so long. So I once again crept over to Sean's bedroom door and listened. I could hear quiet giggling and whispering in the room. I finally opened the door out of curiosity and saw the 4 boys sitting on the rug with a mess of toys scattered all over the place. I noticed that the window was completely open. I told Sean to keep it shut, and to also keep the noise down a little bit before shutting the door. I made a stop into the bathroom before planning to go back to the living room. However, when I was in the bathroom, I noticed through the corner of my eye a black shadow passing the window outside. I ran back to my son's room and told the 4 boys not to go outside. Then, that's when it hit me. There were only 4 boys in the room as opposed to 5. Sean's friend Tom was missing. In a panic, I yelled at Sean to tell me where he was, and they all pointed to the open window. Sean said that he left with the pirate to go find the treasure. In that moment, I felt a mixture of feelings in my stomach, but mostly like it was about to explode. I wouldn't be able to fit through that window, so I ran out the front door and caught view of a man holding Tom's hand and walking towards a car. I yelled at him to stop. They both turned around, and then the man let go of Tom, hopped into the tan-colored Toyota Corolla, and floored it down the streets. I ran to grab Tom and brought him back inside. I was no longer comfortable with this sleepover and called all of the parents, told them what happened, and suggested they all come and pick up their kids, which is exactly what they did. I received a bit of criticism from Tom's parents at first, but they ultimately thanked me, and their son is still good friends with my son. The boys all said that a random man came to Sean's window, knocked on it, lifted it open himself, and talked in a pirate voice, asking one of the kids to come with him to find the treasure. The fact that this happened in the assumed safety of my own house, and that it actually worked, is what disturbs me the most.
Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. The case of Richard Trenton Chase is a story which even the most depraved horror writer would struggle to create. Over the course of 4 weeks spanning across 1977 and 1978, Richard Chase took the lives of 6 innocent victims in Sacramento, California. His murders gradually progressed in violence, beginning with drive-by shootings and culminating in acts of cannibalism.
So this happened when I was 20 years old. I'm 22 now, so it's not that long ago. While in college, I was a babysitter during the week for a family, and sometimes I would nanny for this other, wealthier family on the weekends. They would go away often on the weekends and leave their 2 kids, so I would stay at the house for the weekend with the kids. They had a whole dedicated guest bedroom just for me, and the family was super nice, so it was honestly great while it lasted. It happened in the fall. The leaves were all falling and it was chilly outside. I had gotten to the house Friday, and Friday night went completely fine. I just played with the 2 kids, who I'll nickname James and Jessica. James was 7, Jessica was 5. They were both cute and well behaved. Their bedtimes were 7:30 for Jessica and 8:30 for James. During the day, I'd play with each of them with their toys. The family had 2 dedicated rooms for their toys, one for Jess, one for James. Jessica loved her dolls and doll houses. I spent a lot of time playing with her. James loved playing his video games, so I'd watch him play. These kids really had everything, and the house was gorgeous. It was a giant property with a big pond in the middle. It had a separate 3-car garage, and then a pool with a pool house across the pond, which was also a bar and rec room, with a pool table and darts, arcade games, and a giant TV and multiple sofas. This family was so well off and over the top that they even had an intercom that connected from the pool house to the actual house, so that if you press a button on the wall in either place, it would ring and then you could talk through it. The pool house also had a giant window that overlooked the pond and had a view of the house. So after the kids went to bed, I was free to do as I pleased for the night. It was great. I wasn't supposed to have friends over though. That was a rule I respected. I would just FaceTime my friends and watch movies in the pool house to pass the time. It was not a bad place to have free time in, I'll tell you that. I started getting hungry, so I walked back across the property to the house, entered the code to let myself in, and went to the kitchen. They had so many snacks and food that I was allowed to help myself to. I grabbed a frozen snack from the freezer and threw it in the microwave. And when I was done, I went back across the property to the pool house. I liked hanging out in there more because I could be louder on the phone and have the TV as loud as I want without waking the kids. I was on the couch eating, watching the movie White Chicks, while texting a bunch of my friends. I was just in the middle of telling my friends how great of a gig this was, when the intercom beeper gave me a heart attack. I went to go press the answer button, and I heard Jessica's voice on the other end, saying she's scared because she keeps hearing noises. Usually she'd sleep through the night, so I'd have to go tuck her back in. I set my food down and ran back across the yard to the house. I entered through the door with the code lock again and went to Jess's room. She must have ran straight back to her bed after we got off the intercom, because she was already back in her bed all scared. I went to tickle her and tuck her in just so she wouldn't be scared anymore. When she felt better, I left her room, shut the door, and walked down the hall back to the kitchen to grab some wine. As I was looking for a wine opener, I heard the ever so lightest crack in the wood floor from another room. I froze and looked in that direction, instinctively waiting for a second sound. I didn't want to start freaking myself out now. I didn't want Jessica saying she's hearing noises to get in my head. I was thinking it was a regular house settling noise. I admit I was a little creeped out now, but I left the lights and TV on in the pool house, so I had to go back. I went outside, locked the door with the code, and ran across to the pool house. I sat back down on the couch and resumed eating the rest of my food. I didn't end up bringing the wine. I still had White Chicks on, though I was mostly just getting distracted on my phone. Then that damn intercom went off again, making me jump in my seat. I hurried to answer it, and when I did, there was silence on the other end. "Jessica," I said into the mic. I thought for sure I heard someone breathing, but that's all I could hear. I said both Jessica and James' names at least 3 times each. Now I was actually starting to become terrified. I called my friend Kelsey and told her I want her to come here because I'm actually getting really scared. I told her that the little girl I'm watching said that she was hearing noises, and then I heard a noise, and now someone pressed the intercom button but didn't say anything. I felt like it was not something one of the kids would do. I was still on the phone with Kelsey, who was telling me to stop being paranoid, but she also sounded drunk. I was looking out the window to the house the whole time I was on the phone with her. The hallway lights turned on. I told Kelsey this, and any ounce of possibility that it was one of the kids disappeared when a large figure stepped into